What is a social enterprise? And how do you know if it's the right working environment for you? That's what we're talking about today with our guest, Matt Saunders. Matt, thank you so much for coming all the way from Leeds. When I read your story, I was so fascinated because you managed to combine your desire to run your own business and your desire to fight injustice. So that's the reason why you set up a social enterprise, right?
That's right.
That is called CharityBox.
Yes.
Now, what is CharityBox and what inspired you to take on this journey?
So CharityBox is, like you said, a social enterprise. And the reason that I set it up was because I'd seen lots of really good charities doing good work in my area. And I saw that the work they were doing in terms of digital could be improved quite a lot, and my skills could be brought in to do that. And I think the catalyst for it was back in 2014 or something like that. I just by chance started working with a local charity, and they exist to kind of fight child sexual exploitation. And what they wanted me to do was set up this members forum so that people could go on there, parents, teachers, and they can get support from one another on kind of raising awareness around CSE, child sexual exploitation. And after I'd set up this forum, the feedback was really good. So people were engaged in it and they were getting a lot of use out of it. And I thought, wow, this is like an epiphany moment for me that my skills can actually be used to do something that has some social value rather than just to make money for someone. So that was kind of what inspired me to start. And that was back in 2014. And I've just been thinking of how I can kind of formulate that into a proper business model since then. And that's why I set up CharityBox.
Wow, so you set up CharityBox in the form of a social enterprise. What is exactly a social enterprise and why it's different from a charity?
So a social enterprise is an organisation that is not strictly for profit, but it's also not necessarily a donation kind of funded organisation either. So there's this thing that I've learned when I set this up. You have a charity on one end, which is purely not-for-profit organisation, and then you have obviously for-profit businesses on the other end. Actually, there's a huge scale in between those two entities where you can put yourself as a social enterprise. And the crucial difference with the social enterprise is that it has social value built into its business model. And what you have to do is when you incorporate the business, there's something called your Articles of Association. And inside those governing documents, you specify what your social mission is. So the idea is that any profits that you earn through that company gets reinvested to serve that social purpose. And that's the main difference between a for-profit business that doesn't do that and a charity that solely does that.
So what causes do social enterprises usually work with?
So, it varies. It could be community groups and kind of, like we said, they don't have to be charities as such. So there's one in Leeds that springs to mind called the Real Junk Food Project. And what they do is they intercept food that's going to go to landfill and then they serve it to the local community. So it's food that's still in date, but it's past its sell-by date. So it's still perfectly good to use, but it's going to go to waste. So they take this food and they've opened a cafe and they cook the food and they serve it, and it's a pay-as-you-feel setup as well. So people in the local community can drop in and pay whatever they can afford really for that food. So yeah, it's kind of community projects like that social enterprises typically tend to serve.
That's really fascinating. Wow, I'm sure our audience will love it. So Matt, going back to your story, what made you think that you wanted a sort of a 9-to-5 kind of role instead of a career, for example, in the private sector?
I wanted to do website development, went to university and studied web design, got my degree, and then went straight into a job. And that's when I kind of realised that the 9-to-5 wasn't really for me. I remember thinking at the time, like, this can't be it. I go to this same place every single day, I sit at the same desk and I do the same work. And there's nothing wrong with that per se, but for me, I wanted a bit more variety to my work. I wanted a bit more autonomy in what I was in how I use my time.
So do you feel part of the change that they bring into the world?
Yeah, I do actually. Yeah, and like I said in my business plan, I actively look to measure how my work is assisting what they're doing, because that's part of the model.
And how that makes you feel?
Yeah, it makes me feel really good.
Yeah,
it really does. Like I was saying earlier about the CSE charity, seeing that people are actually supported by that and getting something out of it is it's a really good feeling. So yeah,
Wow.
it works for
Well
me.
done, Matt. I'm sure this is having a great impact because in the current time, actually charities and non-profit organizations are lacking digital skills. So having people like you on board is definitely a great thing because you can bring the experience that you've made working in the private sector into a sector that really needs more people like you, also motivated by their own values.
Yes.
That's so great to hear. So that's what I would like to ask you. What could we say to our audience if they wanted to consider the idea of working in a social enterprise? What suggestion could you give them?
Well, obviously looking at sites like CharityJob and finding kind of work on there. But I think volunteering at a local charity is a good way to start, and you can find opportunities online. You can also go to sort of dedicated networking events and meet people there that work within charities. But I think one of the crucial things that people have to do is really kind of work out what their own values are, because it's all right saying I want to work in the third sector, I want to work for a charity, but you kind of need to, there's a lot of variety in the third sector.
And so many opportunities
and
as
so
well.
many
It's
opportunities
difficult
as well.
to choose.
Yeah.
So I've read that social enterprises are quite popular with the millennials. Did you get the same impression?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of drive now, particularly from this generation, to kind of find meaning in your work.
It's probably more appealing. So why do you think someone should consider working for a social enterprise? What's the reason?
Well, I think again it has to come back to your values and how you see yourself in the world and how you want the world to be. You know, I think the difference between working purely in a charity versus a social enterprise is that it's an enterprise. So it is a business, it's run like a business more so than a charity. So yeah, I think people would be drawn to social enterprises for that reason. So
it sounds to me that a social enterprise looks more attractive for many people coming from corporate because it looks like a stepping stone in between. I suspect that for many people thinking about moving into a charity when they want to combine who they are with what they do can be a little bit of a jump into the unknown.
I guess it could be probably quite daunting as well. And I think people may be under the impression that working at charities is so different from working in the corporate sector that it's not for them. So yeah, you're right in saying that it's a bit of a stepping stone between working in corporate and working in charities.
Which makes it probably more attractive and more doable.
Yeah, exactly. And like we said, social enterprises are run as businesses. So you have that element to it as well.
And what are the differences between your life as it is now and when you had a job that you loved? Because you loved your job, right?
Yeah, I mean, the last job that I was in, I really enjoyed, and I was working with a good team. And obviously, when you go work for yourself, you're working alone. But I think the positives are that I think, you know, I get to meet lots of different people. I get to help out charities, and I get to feel good about that, and I get to see the actual impact of it as well. So that's really the main difference. It's just a different way of living, really.
And what are the characteristics that you think are necessary to build a brilliant career in non-profit and particularly in social enterprises?
The characteristics, that's a good question. I think you have to be resilient. You've got to be a good communicator. You've got to be able to come up with ideas and be able to actually convey them to other people. And you need to be passionate about what you do as well. I mean, you could say that about any endeavour, really, that you want to be successful in. You've got to be passionate about it. So, yeah, those are my kind of top three, really.
And in terms of recruiting, you have a social enterprise now, so I suppose sometimes you have to recruit as well. What are you looking for in a CV when choosing the people that could work for you?
So I'd be looking for a CV that's kind of very focused on the role that people are applying for. So it's not kind of it hasn't been sent out to loads of different companies. And I think first and foremost, I'd be looking to try and understand what that person's about. So their interests, their hobbies and that kind of stuff. Those are my kind of key things. And then I'll be looking at qualifications and skill sets and experience, if you know what I mean. So it's like I'm seeing a person, not just a bit of paper with some qualifications on it.
So could we suggest to our audience that when writing their CV, they should really put themselves into that CV on top of their skills, of course?
Yeah, definitely, because people that are looking at these CVs, they're looking to try and understand the people that have written them. So it's a good way to kind of work out who you're going to bring to interview versus the ones that you're not, if you know what I mean.
So something that could help, for example, is the hobby and interest section?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it depends. In the corporate sector, if you're working for a big company, generally you wouldn't go too big on those kind of things. It's more about your raw skill set and your qualifications. Whereas I think social enterprises, charities, I mean, I'm speaking for me personally. I would be looking for the person rather than necessarily their skill set, if you know what I mean.
And what personal characteristics are you looking for in someone that would work for you?
So people that are open-minded, people that are kind of friendly and passionate about the kind of work that they want to do. And obviously with it being a social enterprise, I would be looking for people that care about society, that care about other people, and they care about causes and that kind of stuff.
And in terms of salaries and guarantees for the future, how is it working for a social enterprise?
So I think that employees would be looking for the kind of benefits that they get elsewhere in the private sector. So, holiday pay, that kind of stuff. And a competitive salary, because at the end of the day, you're bringing skills, valuable skills, to an organisation. So really, employees should be looking for those kind of benefits as well.
Matt, what is your top tip for those who are stuck in a 9-to-5 job and want to turn it into a 9-to-a-life career in social enterprises?
So I think the first thing that people have got to do is work out exactly what it is they want to do. So one trick that I used a while ago was to think about what I would do tomorrow if I didn't have any financial barriers, if I didn't have a job and I didn't need to worry about money. How would I spend my time? And when you start thinking about that, you can work out what it is that you want to do. Obviously, you can go and speak to sort of like your local authority as well to find out what social enterprise opportunities are there. YouTube channels like this are obviously really helpful as well because it gives lots of inside scoop on what people are doing in the industry. So yeah, just putting yourself out there, basing it on what you really want to get out of it.
Thank you so much, Matt. That was really captivating. And I'm sure this helped so many other people that were in your position to really understand what's possible for them out there. And you can find roles in social enterprises on charityjob.co.uk. Check out what's possible for you on the biggest job site specializing in the non-profit sector. Thank you for watching and see you on the next 9 to Alive episode.